Well, thank you for your time tonight. We appreciate the opportunity to come in and talk to all of you about what our thoughts are on the site at 6330 West North Avenue. And I guess we're going to hit a number of points tonight, but sort of beginning with the project team that we've got pulled together. So the development team is a collaboration between Joe, myself, and Aaron Matter, Matter Development. He is potentially on his way here. He was speaking at another meeting for another development of his out west of here, and was going to try to make it, so he may be here at the end. But we really feel like we've assembled a good team of professionals to help us out on the project. And then, really starting with where. What is the piece of land that we're talking about? And it's, 130 years ago, it looked a lot like this. Actually, it's up here. This is the Highlands area looking north, but it was farmland. It was very rural, and kind of in its natural state. As Wauwatosa grew up, the need for filling stations arrived in the city to power these guys. And in 1938, there was a filling station constructed on the site, which actually poses kind of one of the complications in this whole thing, in that the site has been contaminated. There are issues with the soil, and so it's a complicating factor in the site. In 1963, this beauty was constructed on the property, and we have actually not distorted the image at all. That's for some reason, the architect thought it would look great, like a pancake. But this building was built in '63 on the site of the filling station, and originally constructed as an office building. It remained in that use up until the kind of the mid-early 2000s. It was fully, to my knowledge, it was fully leased. When it sort of fell into, it wasn't a bad building, it had a bad owner, and ran into some property tax issues and began to lose tenants as a result of that. Now our involvement in this site, in this building, actually extends back a number of years. We assisted a developer in considering the site when it was put out by Milwaukee County as a request for proposal, and they tried a number of options.
Yeah, tried a number of options. We met with Paulette and Jen at that point, talking about what some ideas were that this developer had for the site, and just couldn't get any traction with the development world. I think the site size and the number of units that they were looking at just wasn't penciling out at that size at that time with that developer. And so really we started to look at that building because we had toured it a number of times, and at that point we were thinking of it as a demolition project. And then as we toured the building, it had very good bones. The building is built really well. It's solid masonry construction. It has wood constructed floors, steel beams, and it has when you strip away, sort of an addition by subtraction type of approach to it. When you start stripping away some of the coverings, the drop ceiling, it reveals a beauty sort of like some of the third ward lofts have, where you get the exposed structure. Now I have joists, I have wood joists, I have steel beams, and just the heavy masonry construction of the walls, starts to inform a language that is really familiar for an office type use.
So then that kind of brings you to the what? I mean, if this is the property that we're talking about, what are we talking about as far as the use for that site? The site plan itself looks, dramatically what it looks like today, because we're reusing the building. So the property would be here, and then parking would be a very similar situation in back. We would clean the lot up and re-landscape along North Avenue and 64th Street. There's a bumper crop of thistles out there right now. The building from the street would look like this. So we would, as Joe was saying, we'd kind of strip away a lot of some of the bad decisions that were made by the previous architect. You know, that's always struck me as a ranch home that kind of swelled up, and it's also supposed to be an office. It's just, there's a lot of inconsistencies between the design and the use. And so we're going to try to correct some of those. We would trim the big kind of ranch overhang off, make it more of a traditional office cornice at the top. And then we'd use natural warm materials to kind of bring some cohesiveness to this building and some warmth as well. So,
yeah, and I think you know, it's going to be like the last proposal. I think it's more of it's an inline type building. It's a background building. It's one that isn't screaming for attention, but it wants to be well done. And when looking at the materials, I think there's an inherent flaw in the brick that was chosen originally for it. You know, you walk around Tosa and you say, boy, I really love that aggregate concrete brick house that I just saw. You know, said no one ever. And what we're going to do is do a hand-troweled stucco finish on it. So brick really lends itself nicely to being a great substrate for doing, and it's really almost a more European feel. And that's one comment that we received when we started sharing the design, is that it has sort of a European feel to it. And there's so many lovely homes in Wauwatosa that have that hand-troweled stucco look. And it's a very, very familiar technique that you would see in a lot of European buildings. A lot of European buildings utilize that technique. And so we're bringing that in to the building to give it a nice, you know, tonal, leathery texture. And then we're introducing warmth through wood, through balconies, through wood elements, and then we're upgrading the windows. So obviously we're going to bring the building up to you know, better thermal performance, and just using better materials, making better decisions.
Yeah, and then kind of jumping inside, the use of the building would be commercial office. So it would be, you know, we'd dedicate one floor to the East Tosa hub, which is co-working. And then the balance of the building would really be determined either, you know, more hub space if that idea proves to be popular, or it would be traditional office space. So zooming in kind of on what what could the East Tosa hub look like. It's a co-working work share environment. So it's basically a subscription model. You lease you could lease one of several different levels of space, whether it's the kind of the entry level where you basically get the right to plop down at a shared table, use the conference room, use the bathrooms, use the kitchenette. Kind of a mid-grade level if you would have a dedicated workstation that's your computer, your space, you control it. And then the more higher end option of having an enclosed office space that you can take private phone calls and so forth. So
yeah, just talking about the use of office and what not only this building itself as an entire, you know, continuous 4,000 square feet of lease space for an office, mixing with you know, really granular co-working type space, is it provides diversity. It provides something that does not exist in this corridor. We spent probably 2 years trying to find the office that we're in now, and for the last year and a half we've been looking for what's the next move, because our office right now is on 66 and North, and we're in 1,500 square feet, and we've outgrown it, and we need something bigger, and we want to stay here. And where do we go? And you know, we had our eye on this long before the log cabin came along, and the log cabin came along, and that happened to work really well with some other dynamics that were in play. But this still has, it has a need. It fills a need that there isn't this space that exists in the corridor, on that North Avenue corridor, not till you get out to Mayfair. And so to really complement the diversity of uses, and Nick has done a beautiful job of getting at that use case of why this scale office makes sense in this location. I think we're just prime examples of people that that have come into the space, have seen the difficulties about trying to find that space, and know that there's others like us out there looking for space that can't find it.
So that kind of plays into the who. Who's going to fill this building up? And well, these are actually 4 individuals that have approached us since the RFP responses were made public. We've kind of given them anonymity to protect their innocence. But two gentlemen and 2 women who reached out to us and said that they would be interested in, having some spot at the East Tosa hub. And their reasons are all pretty similar. They're people that are either they have their own business and they're working from home, or they're working for a larger business that may be in Colorado or Georgia, and they need they're basically the footprint of that larger company within the Milwaukee area, and are working out of their house, working out of the Starbucks, and they'd like a more kind of professional and collegial space to be able to work out of. And this guy on the top knows 5 others who might be interested, so that's already 1/5 of our target group. And then Aaron kind of drilled into sort of the dynamics behind the demographics. So he looked at the City of Wauwatosa, what's within that limit, what's within the 1.5-mile bike ride limit, and what's within a 15-minute walk limit. Sort of the demographic category that really I think this appeals to is anyone between 25 and 74 with an income of over $50,000. Those are the people that are most likely to start their own business or go off on a business endeavor. And so basically we took that and it's a little hard to read down here, but the freelance population of that, about 47% of the millennials and 36% of the other age groups, times the percentage of freelancers where business is a sole source of income. It kind of gives you your target capture for the neighborhood. We're looking for 1 floor of the hub to fill about 50 spots. And so within Wauwatosa, there's about quite a good demand for what we're looking for. And then this is kind of a slide with a lot of text, but I think it's a good, it's all salient points. So it talks about, this sort of, we're in the gig economy is what they call it, where more and more people every year are, working, kind of cobbling together a number of contracts and doing that as their profession versus the old model of going to work for a company and staying there for 20, 30 years. So the market for this is growing, and it's not just one person in a company. There's, like I mentioned before, there are people that work for much larger companies and are the local footprint within the community.
Yeah, I mean, I can talk on that a little bit. I think of the people that we've engaged with, quite a number of them work for larger out-of-state companies. And as the world, as the model of working in the world has shifted, so that people are working collaboratively across the globe. I mean, there's people working for European companies that are in Wauwatosa. And as that has happened, people are seeking out human engagement because they don't want to, because what's happening is they're working for these companies and they're missing that human element, they're missing that human piece. And time after time, every person we talk to, they say, yeah, I go to the coffee so I can be around other people, but I just, it's too loud there and the internet sucks, and they want to be around other people. And that's why these co-working spaces there's a growth, the growth in demand, and that's why 2 of the 3 proposals had that integrated into the concept here, is that Tosa is a great spot for it, and there's a big demand.
So that kind of feeds into why here, why Wauwatosa, and why does this proposal make sense for this site? I think first and foremost, approaching it from an ecological standpoint. So, our proposal, we want to maintain the existing building on site, and we're offering to clean the site up and get closure on it. And so when we look at buildings, buildings are comprised of raw materials and labor, and all of those components have an ecological and a carbon footprint to them. So this is a kind of a graph of the kilograms of CO2 that goes into each kilogram of building material. So obviously aluminum with really high intensive industrial processes has a lot of embodied energy in it, whereas some, straw, concrete, stone, less. But those, that carbon has already been put into the atmosphere. The damage in extracting those materials and building the building has already been done. So, rather than demolish that and use more resources, more time and effort to build a new building, we're proposing kind of working with what you've got. The other graph is basically the timeline of the carbon footprint between a new building in blue and an existing building in orange. And it takes about 42 years for those two to kind of overlap, where the performance of the new building actually ends up being a lower carbon footprint. So, and then from the strength of the co-working environment, this is basically the cities with co-working spaces per 1,000 firms with less than 5 employees. Average is 8.6, and the Milwaukee area shows up nowhere on that list. So we have plenty of room to move up into the top 25 cities on that list. And then as far as a locational argument for why here, this is a map of all the other co-working spaces within the larger Milwaukee metropolitan area. Wauwatosa highlighted in red, and the site at 6330 West North Avenue, boy, that sure fills a territorial gap on that map. And then if you zoom in to the Y on a neighborhood level, and you look at East Tosa, this thing is right smack in the heart of the East Tosa and the Uptown Crossing neighborhoods. And within a 5-minute walking radius, we've got two really substantial, great neighborhoods. And having this as an option for office space, which is not, it's not available anywhere else on North Avenue in that neighborhood, is going to add to the value of those homes by providing people who live there an option to potentially work there if they have the ability to choose that. And then also you've got the commercial component of North Avenue running east and west through there. And it's home to all of the businesses and places that we love to go. And so one thing that we looked at as for one reason why an office use makes sense on North Avenue is we care about vibrant cities, we care about vibrant neighborhoods, and we want to create kind of this mix of uses that really adds to the activity on the street. So we looked on basically a typical Thursday on Google. You can go on and it'll tell you your typical wait times depending on which time you want to go to any of these establishments. And you'll see that they all have a somewhat similar curve where they've got a bump at 5 o'clock to, Walters is 2 a.m., but 5 o'clock to 9 o'clock. And you know that from trying to drive through that area at night. It's hard to park, it's hard to drive, and there are lots of people in that neighborhood spending money and supporting these businesses. And so what we think an office use in that area could do with a substantial number of people there during the day, is start to push those activity curves forward into the day, so that, you know, Huey is busier at lunch, that Bel Air on a Thursday is busier at lunch. And you know, that helps to stabilize those businesses, so that they're healthy and vibrant and will be remaining there for a long time. It's also you know, a component of the North Avenue plan. I know that was one of the points that we were asked to talk on, and I think it was 20% office use on the.
Yeah, within the site, it talked about that there's 20% of business use on North Avenue is already his office. And it's sort of a cobbled together collection of loose office spaces, not too different than our current office space. But this building, and kind of feeding off of the log cabin development, where our office is going to be, we're getting this critical mass now of some office space that really can, you know, it's going to put an additional, you know, 50 people, 50, 60 people on a daily basis, then using North Avenue during the day. So.
And then kind of ending where we started with old-timey pictures. These are views of Milwaukee at the turn of the century and in the 1940s. And what I like about these photos is it shows the vibrancy and the activity and the health of the street life. And I think that the health of a neighborhood really depends on the diversity of use. So you've got, you know, offices, retail, residential. You know, having a good mix of all these different components, it feeds off of each other, and it creates that that vibrancy and that excitement about cities that draws people to them. So that's the conclusion of our presentation. We're happy to take any questions.
Can you comment on 9 off-street parking spaces being sufficient without overwhelming the neighborhood with people utilizing?
The building has 14.
14.
Yeah, correct.
I didn't see that in the illustration.
And
14 sufficient.
Yeah, because we're drawing a lot from, it's a lot of people like me that do walk to the office. It's, you know, the amount of street parking that's in that area. I think what we're bringing is as much, if not more, of any of the other businesses that are along North Avenue currently. And I think what's healthy about North Avenue is that it doesn't overpark. We don't overpark our buildings on North Avenue, and that's a good thing.
yeah, I think the parking crunch really happens right now between the hours of like 4 and 10. I mean, speaking from personal experience, you know, anytime before 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I can park right in front of our office on the street. So it's never been a problem. So I think, yeah, you know, it's a mixture of you relying on the parking that you've got on the site, but then also, you know, relying on the city streets. You know, that's one reason they're there. Being able to park some of that on there. Yeah.
In your pro forma, you have operating expenses for, and I'm assuming that's some staff, like an on-site manager of some sort, or?
Yeah, it would be like a concierge for the hub.
Right.
And then cleaning and landscaping, that sort of thing.
And then so could I, if I had an office space I rented, could I go there at 3 in the morning and work, or?
Yes. Yeah, we would likely have it all controlled by key fobs.
So
So it would register, you know, who's coming in when.
Right, but
You know,
you
if
would
somebody's laptop goes missing, you know, we're able to kind of
Sure.
pinpoint when that happened.
So could you walk me through a what if? So I feel like I just gotta get out of the house today, but I gotta call ahead and rent this space.
It's like a monthly, it's leased on a monthly basis. So it's not something like a coffee shop where you just pop in and out, but it's more of a commitment, and so you're committed at 30-day increments.
So I go to the building manager, I need this for the next 30 days, got a spot in your name.
Yeah.
And if I need like a teleconference that I'm gonna be broadcasting, we're gonna have the
Right.
electronic equipment available.
Yeah, and I think one of the attractions of these types of spaces is the dedicated meeting space that people can check out, because I think that's where a lot of these solopreneurs, what do we call it, solopreneurs?
Yeah.
People that are working It's just they have a terrible time setting meetings with people. And when you're able to control and be able to set, get professional meeting space where you can meet clients, I think it makes a much better impression. And it's just a much more professional environment for that. I think, in terms of, the cost and whatnot, what people have been telling us, when we were talking to people and they were approaching us about this, we started asking them, well, what would you pay per month? And, their costs were right in line, if not higher than what we were, trying to build into our pro forma for that space. And a lot of people, thought that they would be able to get cost sharing with their employer. So they were working for a Denver company, and they go half-seas on it with the employer. So, and then they're kind of setting out maybe a year contract for that type of space. So the models are out there; they're well established. So there's a lot of information that we already have, and that we're applying. And then we are using some of our presence, being on site to gain some efficiencies. Since our office is so close to it, I think there's some aspect of the management that we can handle because we're right there. That other firms may have to completely use outside people to manage the space, whereas we're heavily invested in it. We're right there. Potentially if we upgrade the log cabin, maybe we move into the first floor of this building.
So just following up on that, I think, at least for me, like you said, the benefit maybe of not being too deep in the development world, but whenever I look at these kind of as an outsider, it's a pretty straightforward formula. The building costs this much to build, you need this much in rents to pay for that over time.
Yep.
The previous presentation talked about 11 tenants that you have to secure, and you factor in some vacancy. Can you give me a little better understanding of how your subscription model works? I mean, is it exclusive use of the space? How do you anticipate fluctuations? And you mentioned before you can kind of scale it, which I think is good because it probably provides better coverage. But what happens when the scale is you've got a bunch of solopreneurs just starting back here and they only need a chair versus somebody who's got a 10-person business and needs a conference room full time? I mean,
Right.
How do you plan to adapt to that? And I guess I'd like to hear a little more on the management side of it.
Yeah.
It might
So
be a little
there's
unfair, but that's what they
so
do.
there's a mix of space. I mean, there's kind of, you can come in, you can have just access to the space where you can access the work tables or work desks. You could get an actual dedicated cubicle, or you can actually just rent a room that is lockable. So I think there's a lot of people that do want a space that they can control, but then they open their door and then they're part of the community, the space. They want coffee, they go out, and then they're mingling with other people. And the way we've seen it, we've toured numerous spaces down in Chicago. WeWork, what's the other one? I can't remember, some office space name. But they have demountable partitions where if someone comes in and wants to actually cordon off an area, so we've seen that where companies start to rent clusters of blocks. So they might rent 3 blocks that they own and control. There's ways to do that and be flexible. And then ultimately, if someone grows into an office space, we have the rest of the building. 50% of the building is traditional office space. That's just going to be that. It's sized in such a way that is a high demand office. That size is in high demand. Continually.
And maybe I missed this. So you said 50% is traditional office space. Is
Correct.
And that's leased separate from this.
Totally separate. Yeah. So we're not going in assuming we're going to co-work the whole building.
Okay.
So
At first.
Yeah, at first. I mean,
I think ideally we'd like to, pack that building full of creative people that are starting businesses. But there's a sort of a financial mechanics to this, and having a traditional office tenant in a portion of the building is something that banks will understand, and that helps in those loan discussions.
Right. We've had inquiries on that side of it. People that are just interested in leasing out 4,000 square foot first floor done 5-year lease, that type of thing. So that's, we're going into, obviously we don't control the building, we can't really market it effectively. So some of those dynamics aren't well known yet. To your point about the management, so a lot of these sites require, I don't think, a full-time on-site manager. We're seeing ours to be kind of co-managed with our own office. So one of the positions that we are looking to add is an office site manager. And we don't necessarily, for our firm, need someone that's full-time at this point. You know, we're only 8 people. But then to be able to leverage that and use that, that person to then manage the co-working space as well gives us flexibility. And if, you know, if one grows with the others, then we can adapt to that, you know, as the economics prove out. But initially, to get it off the ground, that's how we would handle it. So.
Thanks.
So what vacancy factor are you assuming in your projections?
I believe we use 20%.
20% vacancy?
Yeah, we try to be conservative.
Yeah, thanks, guys, for coming here to present. So, kind of building on Craig's comment, I'm curious, you know, how do you get it started? 'Cause I'm thinking about friends that I know who work in these co-working spaces in Madison, Chicago, and they've all they like needed sponsors from within the space to kind of become a part of it. You know, so it's kind of self-selected group so that you didn't end up with this like annoying guy there that no one wants to be around.
Yeah.
And then it's just all kind of like.
Yeah, I mean, there would be an application process of, you know, what is your business? There are certain businesses that we might not, you know, digging into like what bylaws might be for membership.
And then you guys would then make, because I'm just thinking, you open this up, you got to start paying the debt.
Yep.
You want bodies, you know.
Sure.
It seems like you would need a pretty hefty reserve, I guess, to be able to kind of have the luxury of being selective and ensuring that like the group of folks that you get in there are folks that all kind of want to be interacting with each other.
Yeah. Well, it's not something that's going to be constructed overnight either. So the idea is you're probably a 6-month construction ramp where you are going out there and heavily pounding the pavement as far as leases.
I think we thought you showed a chart. It had a bunch of cities, and it showed like I think a number of co-working spaces per number of companies with less than 10 employees, and then it seems like you drew a conclusion from that Milwaukee wasn't on there.
Yeah,
therefore, Milwaukee is so low. But I guess maybe that's clear to you from the data that Milwaukee just didn't make the cut. But it could be that Milwaukee falls somewhere in the spectrum, but just wasn't large enough or didn't have data on it, or for whatever reason wasn't included in this chart. And so do we know kind of where Milwaukee Metro, you know, what is the number of co-working spaces, you know, per firms with less than 5 employees?
Yeah, I think this was the top, you know, they ranked them as far as the top cities. I can't tell you where Milwaukee's at down here, but it was the top, you know, 25 cities with co-working space. You know, they tend to be in the higher rent, you know, the higher rent cities have more. So that is one reason that we're further down. But you know, the saturation rate is a lot higher.
I'd just be careful drawing that assumption, I guess, from the data. I guess
Sure.
to me would be clear at all that Milwaukee was so far down. So what do we know about the occupancy of existing co-working spaces, like in, say, downtown? Do we know, are they full? Do they have wait lists? You know, and what do we know about their health relative to I think you showed 2
Could you go back to
Yeah.
that slide?
Sure.
I mean, I think, you know, just the concept's nice, you know, it just, maybe I think, boy, would I want to be there, but, you know, I guess I just wonder about the long-term viability, and so this is kind of my approach here.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, these are all spaces that have opened within the last 5 years. I think Hudson might have been the first one, or maybe potentially Regis out in Elm Grove. None of them have closed so far. So
There are a lot in the nonprofit community. There's a lot of this going on, where this is the new model, where you have small nonprofits having shared mission and then shared resources. So I see that also as a potential.
yeah, and I think one thing that we feel good about is you know, the locations of these and then the locations of, you know, people with reasonable incomes that want to start businesses. You know, so it's, I feel like Wauwatosa is a creative pot, and there's a lot of people that are starting things in
Sure.
the city, and so having something, you know, you don't have to drive downtown, is, you know, it's a market factor that the others aren't, you know,
Right.
necessarily.
But are they, like, is Five Wise Workshop, which is probably the closest kind of proxy, or do we know, are they full, are they, you know, the downtown ones?
I don't know that.
I do know about Workloft Milwaukee, which is the one that is on Prospect or Farwell. That one's fully occupied. So Aaron, who's not here right now, he lives in East Tosa. He lives a few blocks from this, and he co-works up at Ironwood Co-working Space, which you look on the chart is way up in Glendale.
Okay.
So he's a member there. I spent a good time at the Regis downtown, and
It's a different feel, I'm sure.
yeah, a little bit, so.
Just a clarifying question.
Yeah.
On the schematic that you showed of the layout of the co-working space, is that on the first or the second floor?
It's on the second floor.
So that's gonna be the first floor, that'll be the traditional commercial offices, and then the second floor will be the
Yeah, we feel like probably from a tenant perspective, probably more attractive on the first floor. So black people in some longer.
Oh, I did those first. So then you need a lift then for ADA?
There was an elevator installed in the building in 2006.
Yeah, that's one of the unique things about this office building. It's probably one of the only true modern handicap accessible buildings until you get out to Mayfair. I mean, there's so many cobbled together home type offices on, there's 20% office use on North Avenue, and most of it is walk up or it's just not very handicap friendly. There's a lot of those wood constructed ramps up the building, so it's a little odd. This one was retrofitted with an elevator back in the 90s. 2006, so all right, even better.
Okay, thank
All right,
you.
thank you.